What's going on, YouTubes? It is time for a recap. As we zoom in Discord here, we got right around 7 a.m. Central this morning. We were dealing with some beautiful 15-minute Fibonacci's from 663.43 to 662.90. If you see this high-low extension, we did press down pretty quickly to that 2618, expecting some return longs up to 663.23 this morning. So as we're posting our plays here in the Discord, you notice that we did pretty well on those fundeds this morning. At the start, we noticed we had a QQQ algo right here, 59918 to 59779, which we'll cover, and the obnoxious force up at the end of the day there, which we'll also cover. So totals today, a little over 54.50 in the fundeds, and we had some really big cash on those longs. So as you can see here, the Discord did quite well. So let's talk about it. We'll start here on the QQQ. We have always put on our gold high-low Fibonacci from yesterday's highs, yesterday's lows. Now, we had one little helping hand with an algorithm today at 7 a.m. Central. So if we take this one, this was the orange one you've seen in chat, pointed it to the downside, and we had this first short out of the gate here as we were looking for some heavy selling pressure downward, and we'll go over why NQ dragged the QQQ down for these algos to pre-low. So if you take that high-low extension here, we just showed you in orange, look to your right, all those wicks breaking into that beautiful pre-market low level in the blue, finding many rounds of support, and we're looking at this at a 15-minute chart, so that is all day support and a little bit of slip right there. Notice this first extension we're dealing with here rolled down to that 1618 with pre-market and just could not help but come back up to the golden high-low. So every single day you want to put those high and low golden Fibonacci's on and focus on whether or not we're going to hit that golden pocket. So if you go to the Qs, this was our first opening morning drop, and this is why. So you know me in gap volume imbalances, especially on the 1-minute chart, clustering together. Here's both instances that we had seen. The whole trade day was built off of these two things. So if you look left, we had the 1-minute open gaps, right? And we had those on the Monday grind up where we forced all the way up here just under 25K. And we left these two gaps open. We had a cluster of them yesterday for the 3. Those came down right here, and we didn't hit those quite yet. But take a peek at this. So these two gaps right here, 2:30, 3 in the morning, the Asian session 3 a.m., the ETFs and stocks open up here for USA. So we need to see the gaps hit in the same day as they shy. So you see that price action come down, 3 a.m., shies the gap, okay? These are the only two gaps left open on the 1-minute chart we have on NQ, 24,734, 24,752. Notice that wash right there at 3 a.m. when stocks open, right to the 3618 to the penny. Did it fill that gap? Nope. So we had a high probability chance to return. Now, there was only 2 trade plans that we wanted to fib out today and play. It was the fair value gaps that were left at the yesterday's highs. So we channeled these out and said if it keeps on keeping on above 24,760s, 780s, we'll come back to the golden pocket, as you see here perfectly at the end of the day squeeze. We obviously could not get too much farther than the volume imbalances we had picked right here. So the opening drain, the opening short, was all developed on the loss of 24,800, right? So we had a speed short this morning, and I said, yeah, well, let's short it if it cracks out of the gate and goes low. We were short in 24,830s and the break of 24.8, all because of this algo right here. So we had those 1-minute gaps. Then you close out ahead of time, like always. So the 3618 all the way back to the 2618, right? Failed the 8:30 open. That's where it closed everything here at the New York Open, and those gaps were done. So if we delete those gaps, we only have one other play to play off of, and this is what we did in our pre-market breakdown for our group, is the 15-minute fair value gaps and the GPs. So this 10 a.m. candle from yesterday is the 15 we picked because it's obviously associated with 2 fair value gaps and a no tag GP with a little 10 SMA. So you take that 15-minute high-low, you run the extensions. What did you notice right here at 24,890.75? Well, after it moves from the 100% down to the 1618 here, it never returned back to the 100 to continue cycle, right? Which means when something breaks out of the fib range and it goes to the 1618, It has a strong sense of bouncing at the 2618 and 3618 levels to magnet back up to that 100 and magnet back up to that GP. So one more time, you take that high, low 15, it goes to the 1618. If it does not retrace right here, it does not go to the 100, right? You're looking for the long reversal off extensions. If it does go and you draw the fibs here and hits to the 100 and then continues, it is a much weaker drop because it has tested the 100 fib. Okay, so in this scenario, we obviously have the full rundown to the 3618, and that was the final low of the day. The algos could not push this thing under the 1 minute gaps we had chosen. It could not push this thing under the 3618 extension. So she had to slam back into the GPs, right? So let's take a look at this from SPY's point of view as well, since this was a big one for us. For another gold, and we are still chopping the 663, right? So what's next? Well, pre-market low was a beautiful sweep here, and then it shot back up to that 50. It's funny because we tried playing this one a few times long, waiting for these big points of interest to have like a mild support, higher low, higher high, any kind of system. But the volatility index is the one thing that kind of kept us out of the big longs. We had been trading NQ. And if you notice here again on the 15, we have just been all day beating up that really low pre-market low of the day, yesterday's low. But let's take a peek why. So if you bring the volatility index over here, notice that we had a gap up, okay? This was the secondary reason why we chose short and then long. We had that big push up into the VIX, so it had held. It came down to 100 EMA in the green and yesterday's highs, right? We generally can find some decent support there, so that opening short worked out well. Now, once the VIX started showing us that it had a little extra weakness, right? It couldn't break over 1650. That's the opening price of the day. We kind of just left it alone to play chop 16. If it opens above that 16 tomorrow, we still come into the bigger news pieces we have throughout the week. We have PCE, we have the ADP employment report. Once those come out, we're going to see that VIX rocket that 16, break through the 1650, which we got stuck at today, and start heading towards 1720 to 1740. But the likelihood of that is only going to be jobs data dependent. So this last push up, let's talk about the pink no tag GPs that we have here and 663 on SPY. We didn't have any chance here to defeat that 10 SMA. So we've been watching this real close at 663 on SPY. Once this goes under the 10 SMA, we hit our short target of the green zone, comes back up for that loop, and then we look for some closes back under 663 in order to move to 65227. That's our whole setup. Right now, that 10 SMA daily has been holding exponentially well. And if you note right here, obviously that's 926. That is a no GP candle here in the pink, right? I could extend this to the left. You can see it. So if anything were to hold support in that channel between the 663 weekly and the pink 100, that's going to be that channeled support in the macro. So again, 926 is a no GP tag candle, which means if we start getting speed under 66236, we come down to the golden pocket of that candle, right? If we hold above the 100, it does what? Chases down the 1618 and then potentially the 2618, right? So right now we had a huge engulfing day where we had ranged out the entire prior daily candle now. And what do we do with that? Well, we had no closes under 663, so we just look for the continuation. That is it. Simple as that. So anything above that 663 close, well, since we're up here, you're going to start watching that magnet up towards all-time high again, leading into October until the VIX, right? So the one key factor here we keep talking about on the volatility index is breaking back up, utilizing the oscillation indicators like the relative strength index and the MACD into that bullish manner over the MACD 0 line, RSI 50. So if we do have an opportunity to see that higher low, higher high continue, which we are in a bullish manner there on the cross of the MAC, and we got a little lazy right there on the RSI. You can see right here in that hard red day 926. Again, that's the no GP we're talking about. We did get a little lazy, but if that VIX decides to break back up further into this week, we are still perfectly fine to start closing under the 663. What you're waiting for is the macro. We need a close under the 663, even if it comes up to sweep all-time high, because that would be best case scenario for a hard drop, right? All we're doing is looking for the closes under 663 over and over and over. Now, for the sweep and for what's coming, if we delete these, we have a couple instances left, right? Two no-tag GPs, which means obviously 925, 926. If you were to draw a high-low on this, the golden pocket, wide open, right? And then the opportunity for this engulfing candle to continue, right, into a high sweep, has a high potential. And when that sweeps, right, jobs could run it up, ADP, whatever happens for the Friday, we could get that sweep in all-time highs and then close under that 663 and continue. Now, if it doesn't, we're just waiting for it to hit the next resistance point on larger standing time frames, like the weekly chart here in the teal. So the only other thing that you could see happen here for the weekly is to run those extensions daily and weekly together. So that 670 is going to be your next target from the daily pink fig we just covered. And then if we do have an opportunity to see, a bigger rally past that, which I have no interest in that yet for 680.32, no big deal at all. I think this all-time high weekly doji is going to be a very, very, very large catalyst. So you're going to take that doji body right here. This is how we always play doji bodies, and you're going to notice right where that sucker comes in, like so, and back to the intraday. So this is the last reason, because we always focus doji bodies no matter what, that last week's doji would not give up. And again, not only pre-market low, not only the extensions from the algo lows, not only the base lows of yesterday's lows or the 10 SMA daily, all of those things are relevant and cause confluence points. But right now, the 662 of the all-time high doji was one of the majors. Okay, so we obviously could not break that thing, so she had to be rocketed up, which is fine because that NQ trade long was our last ditch effort to get back up there, and man, did she hit consolidate 3618, 426 or 423.6 and push that fair value gap and golden pocket. So what's next? Well, the open here on NQ, we still have a little bit to mess around with here. I think in general we have one fairly gap here on the 5. So if it comes back and invalidates that and wants to continue, sure. But right now we do have a lot of different things tugging us, and I think we're waiting for more news. So we're going to wait for data. We're going to see if that continuation on SPY daily wants to drag us up to 670 first. And overnight, since we're going to be very close to all-time highs, we're not going to use too much historic support and resistance. But if we do move this to the right, I want you guys to notice that 15-minute does not have a perfect tag of the 50 yet. So if you zoom in, the 50 retracement, 50% right here, 24,916.72 was not tagged. These got very close but shied. So I would say just overnight here, you're going to be watching the travel of the 1618 back up to that golden pocket near yesterday's highs and continue that scan squeeze back up since the VIX is going to be shut down. And we just usually get those overnight run-ups, for the fours. And that is it. Stay tuned for the next.